And the high five habit, this simple little science-backed morning ritual, has helped me learn how to push through a lifetime of that kind of picking apart and self-rejection and come back home to me.
Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Today, right now, I'm actually doing great.
Good. And why are things so great right now?
Um, that's a great question. Well, I'm excited to be talking to you, and I think the simple secret to being happy is having something to look forward to. And I am blown away by how impactful the high five habit, this kind of dumb thing that I created that isn't so dumb after all, how it's spreading around the world. And I'm extraordinarily excited that men in particular can push past, I think, the cynicism around some of the ideas that I create and embrace them because of the deep science around them. And so I'm just feeling this like delicious anticipation of how this conversation that we're about to have is going to really impact people's lives.
Well, let's take it back to the beginning when it comes to the high five habit and talk about the origin story. And this you describe in the book. One morning you were actually in your undergarments in front of the mirror
Hmm.
and you decided to give yourself a high five. So I'll let you take it from there. Let's have you set the scene and get into the details.
Yeah, a rather pathetic moment. And this is sort of the brand of my personal development. I got to fall into a hole and then manufacture a ladder. I kind of wish I could just be like somebody that's studying this stuff in a book and then applies it, but I tend to be the person that has to screw everything up or hit rock bottom in order to discover something that's surprising and simple that will help you in those moments where you don't know what to do. And so, um, this all happened in early April 2020. You don't even need to know the backstory because the feeling is so relatable. I woke up one morning and I just felt defeated. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I was going through a hard time in my business. I was worried about my employees. I was worried about the P&L. I was worried about my kids who were going through a hard time. I just felt overwhelmed by the demands of my life. And I used the 5-second rule, something that I had created 13 years ago. And I counted backwards to get out of bed 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And, this is an interesting moment to also say I've been using the 5-second rule since the morning I invented it to get out of bed. I've used it for 13 years. And it's important to say that because I think there's this myth out there that if you repeat behavior for 21 to 67 days, depending upon what expert you talk to, that somehow that behavior becomes a habit. I think that's only true if you kind of like doing the thing. I mean, I literally have to use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to ratchet myself out of bed every day. So I get out of bed, I make my bed, I start dragging myself to the bathroom. I get to the bathroom. I'm brushing my teeth in my underwear. And all of a sudden, I catch a glimpse of the woman in the mirror. And I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And I started picking the woman apart. The dark circles under her eyes, the gray hair coming in, the saggy neck, the boob that's hanging lower than the other. And then, of course, once your mind goes negative and you start criticizing yourself, it just drags you down the drain. And so next thing you know, I'm literally like thinking about the day ahead, and it's not optimistic. It's not a great day. I'm thinking about the fact that I woke up later than I should have, and I'm already behind the ball and I've got 8 minutes to get on a Zoom call and the dog still needs to be walked and I hadn't responded to this email. And I am now feeling heavier and more defeated and more frustrated. And you know what's interesting about that moment is that if you had walked into my bathroom, I would have been able to spin on a dime. I literally would have been able to be like, okay, Jesse, listen, I know it sucks. You don't deserve it. You didn't, this is hard. But guess what? If anybody can face this, it's you. So come on now, pull yourself together, get your butt back out there and get you like, you got this. But in that moment, I couldn't think of a damn thing to say to myself. And here's the thing, I don't even think I would have believed it because it didn't match how I felt. And I don't know what came over me, but for whatever reason, standing there in the bathroom in my underwear, I literally just raised my hand and high-fived the woman I saw in the mirror because she needed it. Now, look, it's not like lightning strike and the heavens opened and, I was like, oh, that's not what this moment was. But there was something that kind of shifted. Like I noticed my shoulders dropped. I lift my chin up, probably because I laughed because it's so stupid. Like who high fives themselves in the mirror? I mean, come on. And I didn't even say anything, but I could kind of feel this energy of shut up, come on. You can do this. Just get out there. And I went on with my day. That was it. That was it. And so the next morning is when everything changed. Because the next morning I woke up and I still had all the same problems that I was facing in my life. Still overwhelmed, still feeling defeated, still just like, ugh. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I drag myself out of bed. I make my bed so I don't crawl back into it. I start walking to the bathroom. And before I even got to the bathroom, that's when it hit me. I realized I was feeling something that I had never experienced before. And this is what it was. You know how when you go to like a cafe or a pub or something and you are about to meet somebody you really like, you're about to see a friend. Right before you walk into that cafe, what do you feel?
Excitement, happiness.
Yeah. Dude, I felt that as I was about to walk in the bathroom. I felt excited to see the human being Mel Robbins. Now, I got to tell you, I am going to be 53 years old this year. I don't ever remember feeling a sense of excitement about seeing myself, the human being. I've certainly been excited to see what an outfit might look like or what a new haircut might look like. But I've never had an experience of looking forward to seeing myself, the person. And so it sort of hits me at a deeper level as I round the corner and walk into the bathroom. And as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm starting to have this really weird feeling that there's two of us in the bathroom. There's me standing there brushing my teeth, and there's this woman in the mirror who is desperate for me to wake up and see her. There's a person that has been longing and waiting for my support. She's trying really hard. She needs me to celebrate her, to encourage her. And so as I put my toothbrush down on that second morning, I start to think about the woman in the mirror and I start to think, well, what does she need from me today? And I have this moment where I sort of think about how am I going to show up for myself? And as I think about whether I'm going to be kind or I'm just going to have fun today or I'm going to be courageous for that woman in the mirror, I literally raise my hand. And again, I seal that intention with a high five. Now, there's a couple things about this that I want to explain because now that we've researched this, I didn't know this at the time, but now that we've researched this, I know the profound, groundbreaking science. I mean, were you surprised by the amount of research that's out there about this?
Oh, for sure. Something so simple and definitely.
Yeah, me too. So, one of the things I want to explain for everybody, because a couple things. Yes, I want you to do it. Yes, I want you to suspend the cynicism. Yes, I want you, even, you're listening to the ultimate health podcast, and even you will feel like this is stupid and too good to be true and something that's you're not doing. I want to explain something. You got to do this for 5 days. You have to do this for 5 days. I've been researching this for more than a year. The science is incredible. And what's super cool about this is that you don't have to do anything except for the high five because your brain and your nervous system are already programmed to have this work for you. It's crazy. And so let me explain what you can expect. So, the first thing that you should expect is that it's going to feel weird. Like, just expect it. Just expect that it's going to feel weird. The thought of it's going to feel weird, doing it's going to feel weird. And I can explain that using neuroscience. You see, your brain loves patterns, and any new pattern feels weird. So, for example, I am a right hander. When I write with my right hand, it does not feel weird because I've been doing it my whole life. My brain knows the neurocircuitry associated with using my right hand. If I were to get into a car accident and lose my right arm today, and I have to start writing with my left hand, something that I am capable of doing, it's gonna feel weird because I'm forging new neural pathways. The same is true about the high five. I know you talk about morning routines. I know you talk about setting the day up because that's how you set it up, is how it ends up. But most of us have forgotten about a particular habit we all have right now in our morning routine. We meditate, we journal, we practice gratitude, but we forget the fact that every single morning we stand in front of the mirror and we literally criticize or ignore the human being we see. That's part of your morning routine right now. And you don't even realize it until you start doing this high five habit. So when I ask you to break that habit of judging, rejecting, and criticizing yourself, it's going to feel weird to do the opposite. So expect it. The second thing I want you to know is that there are only two reactions that people have to the doing of this the first time. The first reaction is that you will raise your hand and have a very positive reaction. You might burst out laughing. You might burst into tears. And the tears are positive because it's a sense of relief that you have finally woken up and recognized that you have this need to be seen and celebrated. And so the tears are like, thank gosh, thank you. But the more likely reaction, even from the Ultimate Health podcast listeners, is going to be, I don't know if this is for me. Really? You're going to feel resistance. And I want to unpack this because the resistance is sad. It's really sad. And when you can understand this resistance and when you can push yourself through it with this high five, your life changes because this resistance is what's holding you back in every area of your life. So the resistance is the fact that every single morning when you stand in front of that mirror, you drag your entire past in that bathroom with you. If you've been abused, if you've experienced trauma, if you've been abandoned, neglected, heartbroken, any of it that's been done to you, it is between you and the person in the mirror. And you see all of that stuff that's been done to you as evidence that you're not worthy, or evidence that you're not lovable, or evidence that you're damaged, evidence that the person standing before you does not deserve a high five. The other reason why you're going to resist this is because when you drag in the past, you also bring in all the stuff you regret. And if you're a human being, you have done some things that you wish you could do over, whether it's drinking or cheating or lying or giving up on yourself or hurting people, all things that you did simply while you were trying to survive. Things that you would forgive me or Jesse for, but you stand in judgment of yourself. You will not forgive yourself for those things. You see a person that because of those things, you don't deserve a high five. You're a bad person. You know, my husband's restaurant business failed after 7 years of working at it. For years, he could not just see that restaurant failure as part of being an entrepreneur. He would look in the mirror and see a human being who was a failure. The resistance he felt when he first started doing this was the fact that if I'm a failure, I shouldn't be high fiving myself. And there's yet another reason why you're going to resist this. So many of us have been trained to believe that we are only worthy of celebration and love when we achieve something that's worthy of celebration and love. That when the number on the scale is where I want it to be, then I deserve a high five. That if I follow through on my promises, then I deserve a high five. If the number on the bank account, the car that I drive, the neighborhood I live in, the texture of my hair, the color, when all of this stuff is what it's supposed to be, then I'll give myself the support and love that I deserve because I got to earn it. And I'm
Mel, would you
telling
say
you,
another area of resistance, this just pops into my head as you're speaking about these, would be the fact that this is such an easy, simple thing. And people think, again, you talk about how people have been doing this in the mirror for years, being self-critical. It's like, how can changing that mindset and changing my ways be so easy?
bingo. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you think that because life feels big and overwhelming and complicated and dark and just relentless, that somehow the solution that cracks us all open and starts to let the light back in is somehow enormous and relentless and overwhelming too. When the truth is, if you're in a dark place, all you need is a teeny crack to start letting that light in, to cause a fracture in this cement cell that's keeping you trapped. Like it is the simplest things. That's what I've learned in my life. That ironically, it is the simplest and oftentimes the silliest sounding things that have the most profound impact. And the reason why is this: tools only work when you use them. And the simpler it is and kind of the dumber it is, the more likely you're going to remember it. And the easier it is to do, the more likely you're going to do it. And the coolest thing about this, and this is what's super exciting and so encouraging, and why I so want everybody to do this for 5 days, is because in about 5 days' time, you will start to feel lower resistance to this, and it won't feel so weird anymore. And the science of it all will start to work for you. And so let me explain this because, I write about some of the science in the book, but even as recently as 3 weeks ago, I was talking to Dr. Daniel Amen, one of the world's leading experts on the brain. He geeked out. I mean, literally for an hour, he went crazy going, oh my, oh my, oh, Mel, do you know why this works? Mel. So there's all this new stuff that I know now that's pretty crazy. So first things first, this is why this is so cool. So you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say a thing. When you go to raise your hand to your own reflection, there's a physical gesture, right? And there's a whole field of neuroscience called neurobics. I did not make this up. It is physical movement or an aerobic activity. So a sudden physical movement that you weren't expecting, because you're not expecting to high five yourself, awakens your prefrontal cortex. When you marry that unexpected physical aerobic movement with a new positive thought, it is actually the fastest way to forge new neural pathways in your brain. So the high five is what we call a neurobic intervention. Here's how it works. You can stand in front of the mirror and you can look past your body and see yourself. You can even start to criticize yourself. I hate my neck. I hate the tire around my stomach. God, I'm looking old. You can start to think that stuff. The moment you go to raise your hand, your brain goes silent. Because when you have always high fived other people, you've never thought, I hate your face. You're a loser. You've always thought something like, I believe in you. Like, what does a high five mean to you, Jesse?
It's a form of celebration between two people where you're acknowledging that person for an accomplishment and you're celebrating together.
Yeah. The gesture says, I see you. I love you. I got you. I believe in you. Let's do this. If you have a bad attitude and you high five somebody, it's literally shake it off. You can do this. It's all of that wrapped into one gesture. And guess what? Because you've received high fives and you've given them your entire life, all of the programming is already in your basal ganglia. So when you raise your hand to yourself, it literally muzzles your inner critic. It's impossible to criticize yourself. Your brain goes silent, and all the programming from a lifetime of high fiving other people now marries with your reflection. I've been doing this for a year, and I don't even need to high five myself most mornings. And here's why: I actually don't, it doesn't even occur to me to criticize myself. I have fundamentally overridden a lifetime of self criticism. I have reprogrammed into my mind that when I see Mel Robbins, I see a human being who's trying. I see a human being with a good heart. I see a human being who needs and who deserves celebration and love. That's all I think. Just like I think when I see my kids or see somebody else that I love. I have literally changed the way I treat and relate to myself. Do I still do it? Yeah, I do. Especially on mornings when I feel I need something, especially on mornings when I'm playing a big game. But what I've noticed has been so profound is just the fundamental, complete rewiring of the mind. And let me explain what else is going on because Dr. Daniel Amen, wow, he hit me with some science. So when I was talking to him, he was like, Mel, do you know why you feel that little like shift in your brain? You feel like a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more confident, a little kind of some mood shift. I'm like, yeah, I felt that. Tell me. He said, well, when anybody else high fives you, your brain gives you a drip of dopamine. So when you do it for yourself, your brain does the same thing because the gesture is already associated with it. And he goes, you want to know what else? I'm like, yeah, tell me what else. He goes, you know how some mornings you drag yourself into your bathroom and you're feeling low energy, but then you kind of high five yourself and you feel just an ever so slight pep in your step. I'm like, yeah, I have felt that. He said, well, the reason why is because your nervous system is helping you. I said, how? He said, well, your nervous system for your entire life has been programmed to understand gestures of celebration. When you wave to somebody, you raise your arm. When you cross a finish line, you raise your arms. When you go to hug somebody, you raise your arms. When you high five somebody, you raise your arms. The more that you do this in the morning, just like exercise stimulates chemical releases and celebratory energy in your body, the raising of the arm alone and high fiving yourself gets your nervous system to give you a jolt of positive energy. How cool is that?
That's awesome. Really cool. What I'm curious about, Mel, coming back to the origin story of all of this, what was different about your morning the day you came up with this? Because it sounds like this was an ongoing thing for you where, you'd look in the mirror, you'd be hypercritical about different things. But, this day was a little bit different and you decided to implement this movement. And I'm curious if you've ever thought back to that and what was different about that day that you did this.
Meaning what I was feeling or what I felt afterwards.
Just where this came from. Why that day? Because, this is probably
Oh, I can tell
this is a
you.
characteristic morning you've had many times, picking apart yourself in front of the mirror, you're in your underwear. I'm picturing this this
Yeah, it's
this
a
scene
habit.
that you said in the book, but it's like, why today did you decide to put your arm up when you're feeling, these negative thoughts?
This is going to sound, well, I'll just say it. I think that it was literally divine intervention. I really do. I feel that um, there's no other plausible explanation. I feel like the 5 second rule is the same thing. I'm hitting an extraordinarily low and challenging moment. And I feel like I don't have it within me to go on and to keep facing this. And it was in that moment that I just did something small. And thankfully, in both the high five habit and in the 5 second rule, I was present enough to notice the small shift. And I was feeling overwhelmed and lost enough that I was ready to suspend any resignation or cynicism that I had and actually lean in to this small idea and go with it and say, what if there actually is something inside of this high five? And, what was going on in the backdrop of my life was something that, everybody can probably relate to. This is not the High Five Habit's not a pandemic book, but it was born in the pandemic. I think we all have that moment where we know, or knew rather, that COVID was going to turn your life upside down in ways that you couldn't even imagine. Do you remember what that moment was for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking back. I remember it kind of as a general time frame. I had just had my first child at the time, so I was kind of focused on that, but it was I can remember the feeling in a general, sense. But again, I was lucky enough to be focused on something so powerful and so uplifting in my own life that was kind of overlapped.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about
Well,
you?
for me, it was a Wednesday in March of 2020. And I was in the middle of taping a daytime talk show in the United States called The Mel Robbins Show. It had always been a dream of mine to have a daytime talk show, to follow in the footsteps of the greats like Oprah and Donahue and Ellen and use television as a way to reach people and help them change their lives. And here I was at the age of 50 getting a chance to fulfill a dream. So I'm at my dream job. And all of a sudden, somebody comes running into the studio and says, we found COVID-19 in the building. You need to evacuate immediately. And within 5 minutes' notice, we evacuate the CVS Broadcast Center in New York on 57th Street on the west side. I don't get a chance to say goodbye to 130 people I've been working with for more than a year. I get in the car, I start driving back to Boston, which is where we live, and I see the New York City skyline disappear, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and it's our daughter who is studying abroad for junior year in college, and she's in Spain. Mom, are they closing the borders? Is something happening? And then the phone rings again, and it's our other daughter who is at that point, freshman in college at the University of Southern California, crying. Are they closing school? What's happening? And then it's my husband and my son, and they're on a ski trip together. And Chris is saying, I think they're about to close the ski resort. I think we're going to try to change our flights. And next thing you know, we're all home. My talk show's canceled. I'm fired from my dream job. A book contract that I had for a totally different book gets canceled, and the publisher wants money back. Now, every speech that I've booked for a year, which is really the source of the revenue that I pay my employees with and that I earn, canceled, 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 canceled. I start having flashbacks to a decade ago when my husband and I were $1 million in debt and in financial crisis, and I was about to lose everything. And there were no PPP loans, and nobody knew what was going on. And that was the backdrop. And for the first 3 weeks, I did not change out of my pajamas. I started drinking Bloody Marys at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I sat in front of the TV in the living room with the dog on my lap and the kids by my side. And we did nothing but watch Glee and Harry Potter. And I didn't even recognize myself by the third week. And it was waking up the third week, wondering, how am I going to make payroll? Thinking, are you kidding me? I have to reinvent myself again? I am too old for this. I have worked too hard. Why does this keep happening to me? And then, of course, feeling bad that I was feeling sorry for myself about career stuff when people were dying from this disease, or this virus rather. And so, just like the battering ram of fear and anxiety and overwhelm and desperation and then guilt and then grief and then all of it, that is what I was waking up to. And I kept thinking, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can handle another thing happening. I can't take one more thing. I can't take one more breakdown. I'm just not strong enough for this. That was the backdrop. That was what I was waking up to. And, I think that first morning, catching the glimpse of the woman in the mirror who was beaten down and exhausted and honestly feeling sad for her, it was almost like an out of body experience because I kind of realized there was this person who needed help. And I just wanted to help her, just like I would want to help you.
Well, it's interesting, Mel, and I think it's really important that you share this story and you're so open and vulnerable because you're Mel Robbins, and people probably look at you and say, or they would turn to you in a time like this if they're going through a similar situation, assuming that you have all the answers. And here you're sharing that you were on your couch for a few weeks and you had all this uncertainty and you're feeling down. And I just think it's so, again, highlighting how important that is that you share that being who you are and having your level of success.
Well, thank you for that. I kind of feel like it's so much more powerful to just be honest about what you're going through. And what I've discovered in my work is that, we're all projecting something, but the truth is, we're all having the exact same insecurities, fears, anxieties, never ending worries, jealousy, comparison. We're all struggling with the same shit. All of us are. And not talking about it is what keeps you stuck. And I literally did not know if I could handle one more thing. And we are all hardwired to be able to lift everybody else up, put everybody else first, cheer everybody else on, plan their birthday parties, take on more work for your colleagues. And yet we sit in silence and we don't know how to ask for help. We're not very good at accepting help. Most of us even don't even like a compliment because we feel like we don't deserve it. And I'm here to tell you that one of the most powerful things that you can learn how to do is to make it a habit to lift yourself up. Make it a practice every morning to look at the human being in the mirror, not pick apart the body, but look past the skin and look and see that there is a soul. There's a person with a huge amount of life experience standing there who, just like a runner in a marathon, life is a freaking marathon. And let's think about the metaphor of a marathon. If you've ever watched a road race, do you stand on the side and with your arms crossed at mile 11 go, I'm not clapping for you. Did you see your last split time? You're dragging, man. You're kind of limping a little. I'm not getting, what? I'll clap when you finish. And then we'll talk about whether or not you could have done better. That's not what we do. We innately celebrate and cheer and clap and high five these runners every single step of the way. And anybody that will tell you that's ever run a road race will tell you the reason why you feel motivated and the empowering aspect of it is because everybody's cheering for you every step of the way. It's what keeps you going. Even somebody like David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, who I freaking love. He's got a form of self encouragement that he practices called the cookie jar. In those 100-mile machine races that the dude runs that are insane, I could never do that unless there were people cheering for me. The way that he gets himself through it is he reaches into a mental cookie jar and pulls out a cookie. What is a cookie? It's an encouraging thought. It reminds him of why he's doing it. And that keeps him going. He doesn't, at mile 97, give himself like a beat down. He picks himself back up. So even the most kind of unbelievable people with discipline know that it's about empowerment and encouragement. The beatdown that you give yourself is demotivating.
I've run a number of marathons and I can totally vouch for the fact that the response from the people watching, the fans, them clapping and cheering and yelling out your name, because during a marathon you have generally will have your name across your bib, and it's very uplifting, encouraging, and it gets you through the tough times. And I can remember being really emotional too and thinking about it now. It's a really unique experience because often, you might have somebody congratulate you for an accomplishment. You do something in your day-to-day life, like, your mom might call you and say good job for that, or you get encouragement from your partner. But when do you ever get that kind of encouragement from strangers? It's a very unique experience, and again, I can just picture almost crying or maybe even crying at times, just feeling that support.
Yeah, it's visceral. And I guarantee you, if you've ever experienced what Jesse's talking about, you can close your eyes and you can feel the energy coursing through your nervous system of what it felt like to be seen and cheered for. And a lot of the emotion probably came when you were on a really hard stretch. And the high five not only becomes somebody cheering for you and transferring belief and energy, but they're also in that high five acknowledging that you're going through a challenging moment. And that experience that is deeply and profoundly an important and foundational part of the human experience, the need to be seen and heard. The fact that a high five, like let's take my husband, there's no way in hell after the restaurant business failed. And what's interesting about this story is that, his best friend and he did the business together. And Jonathan, when the business was over, they went on, they kind of pulled out of the original real crash and burn moment, went on to expand it, and then sold off a bunch of units to a new owner. And they did an extraordinary job. They did not achieve their goals. They did not return the level of return on the investment for their investors. And so you could say they failed. You could say that it was an entrepreneurial venture, and anybody who invests in a restaurant business knows it's risky. Um, and so you can make up whatever story you want about the facts. It's interesting because two people can go through the exact same thing, which they did, and have a totally different story about it. Jonathan's story was we worked our asses off and we did an incredible job. And I'm very proud of what we built. I'm proud of the product. I'm proud of how we treated our people. I'm proud of how hard we work. And I'm proud that we actually didn't lose people's money. We just didn't make them money. And I'm proud that the restaurants are still open under a new owner. Chris, on the other hand, for whatever reason, could not do that. He could not separate what happened from his identity. And so he would stand in front of that mirror for years and years and years. This is only recently, and the help, the high five habit, and a therapist, and treating depression because of this shame. He would stand in front of that mirror and see a failure and see somebody who doesn't deserve support and see somebody who shouldn't be encouraged and see somebody who doesn't deserve celebration, who's not where he's supposed to be, who has tons of evidence stacked up that, and I could clap for him, I could celebrate him, but that doesn't change how he sees himself. And this is why I think that most mantras are complete horseshit because you don't believe them. You can't stand in front of a mirror if you think you're a failure and be like, I'm awesome, because you've been telling yourself you suck for 2 decades. Your brain's like, whoop, like floating away as a fly. We don't believe that. Just like somebody who has body issues, who hates their body, who's been hiding in the back of photos for years, who won't look at themselves in the face, who always thinks that they're the ugliest or the tallest or the biggest or the whateverest of their friends. They will never be able to stand in front of a mirror and go, I love my body, because they don't believe it. The brain rejects it. What you can do is when you raise your hand and you high five yourself, it shuts off the criticism. And the high five, just like in those challenging legs of the marathon, says, I know you think you're a failure, but I still got you and I still love you. I know you don't like how you look, but I do. And you deserve to be happy. You can be happy. That's what it says. It's something that's believable because it acknowledges where you are and it helps you inch toward something better.
And Mel, since you got into that story about your husband sharing that period of time that he struggled, what would you say as somebody who is in a situation like that? Because you were the supporting partner in that situation, and other than teaching them the high five habit, what can we do to support somebody in our life that we care about, that we can just see is taking this on a negative experience like what your husband went through and taking this on in a deep personal way? How do we help
Yeah,
them
and
through
you
that?
I love that you said that. Okay, so let's expand this out a little bit because it's an excellent question. In chapter 3 4, excuse me, of the book, let's bring in one other story that people can relate to. Um, my daughter, and again, literally wrote this book starting in May of 2020. When I started doing this for myself and I started noticing a change and I started noticing this feeling of I'm tapping back into resilience. I'm actually feeling like I can do this. I feel like I have my own back. I then a month later put a photo of me high fiving myself um, up on social media, just because I didn't even like really expect anything. And within an hour, literally hundreds of people. In fact, as we sit here and do this podcast, I have, and I can show you this, a board of people around the world who are high fiving themselves. All colors, shapes, sizes, backgrounds, religions, education, ages. And it reminds me that we are all the same. We all need that sense of being seen and of being celebrated. None of us are giving it to ourselves. And so, as I'm writing this book, and this is why I say this was meant to be, this is so much bigger than the book. The book is a tool, and this conversation is a tool to crack something open, to let some light into the darkness, to help you turn toward what's meant for you, to help you to discover, to rediscover the person that's in there. And, as I was writing this, all these just amazing divine things started to come together. Like this text my daughter sends me that says, "How do I not feel like the ugliest girl at the bar every time I go out?" We've all received a text or an email or a letter from somebody that we love that breaks your heart. And part of what breaks your heart is, first of all, the way they see themselves is the exact opposite of the truth. And the second reason why it breaks your heart is there is absolutely nothing you can do or say that will change the way somebody else sees themselves. And you can say a million wonderful things, and you should. You can offer up all kinds of resources, whether it's therapists or nutritionists or trauma support or podcasts to listen to or books to read, and you should. But how you see yourself is an inside job, which means you got to do the reprogramming yourself. And so what do? Well, you point people to this podcast to listen to in the hopes that whatever it is that you're getting out of it awakens something inside of the person that you care about. You point them towards books. You push them to go to therapy. You point them towards things. But the other thing you need to do is you need to model what I'm talking about in your own life. Because as you start to repair your relationship with yourself and improve it, as you start to celebrate and support yourself and you're kinder to yourself, this is not about being arrogant. This is not about looking in the mirror and being like, I'm the best. That's not how I feel. I actually just have developed a sense of compassion and genuine love for myself. That's it. Do I screw up all the time? Absolutely. Do I disappoint myself? Mm-hmm. Do I feel jealous? Do I compare myself? Every day. Do I do things that I then regret? Yep. The difference is I don't then give myself a fucking beatdown. I have compassion, I unpack it, and I quickly learn and I get better. And there is actually a study in the UK all about this, that the number one thing that'll improve your happiness and sense of fulfillment in life is the number one behavior change we don't practice. It's not eating kale or exercising or meditating. It's actually making it a habit to be kind to yourself. And so what I would say is bring empathy, bring compassion, understand that even and here's the thing, don't argue with them. If I were to say to my husband, "You're not a failure," it actually pushes him away because I'm now rejecting his lived experience. If I say to my daughter, "You're not ugly," that's not what she believes. So what you say is, "That must feel terrible to feel that way. How would you like to feel about yourself? What do you think would help you bridge the gap between feeling this way and feeling how you'd like to feel about yourself? Would you like my support and advice, or do you just want me to listen to you?" That's how you do it because now you're affirming where somebody's at, just like that high five affirms somebody. And then you get somebody else to talk about where they want to go versus telling them where to go. That's how you start to open up this conversation because it's in them seeing for themselves what they want and them working and talking through how they might be able to get there. That's when somebody's going to feel empowered.
And for somebody, whether it be somebody else that's in our life and we want to give them a little bit of guidance if they're asking for it, or if it's ourselves and we're ready to do that deeper work on ourselves and form that better relationship with ourselves, other than the high five habit, what are some of the big needle movers that we can do to start to really love ourselves, accept ourselves, support ourselves?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I wanted to go deeper than a book. So, one of the things I'd love to invite your listeners, and thank you for partnering with me on this. We've created this free 5-day challenge that is freaking amazing. If you're looking to feel more energized, if you want to boost in confidence, if you want to feel supported, if you want to feel connected, just go to highfivechallenge.com and it's a free 5-day challenge. You even get access to an app called Growth Day, which is the world's leading personal development app. It's sort of like a Peloton for personal development. And what's super cool about it is this thing's normally $300. You get it for free while you're taking the challenge. There's 100,000 people in the challenge. So every day you're going to get coaching and tools from me because you'll get to watch a video, you'll get to do journal prompts. And then there's a huge community of people that high five you and that celebrate you as you're doing the simple things in this challenge to implement this. So that's one thing that's there for you because look, you can change on your own. You should show up every morning in your underwear or nude or whatever in your PJs and brush your teeth. We're going to pair this with teeth brushing because we're going to clean out the crap on your teeth. I don't want you to spread dragon breath on people. Then we're going to clean out the crap in your mind. I don't want you to spread your shitty mood on everybody. And then you're going to high five yourself, right? And send yourself into your day. And I wanted to give you something that would support you as you start to make this turn. Because what's going to happen is as you do this 5 days in a row, something does crack open inside you. You weren't born this way. Celebration, self love, it's hardwired into your DNA. It's your birthright. When you were a baby, you don't remember this, but the sight of you in the mirror, oh my gosh, you didn't roll backwards and go, ugh, look at these chubby thighs. Nobody's ever going to love me. You literally crawled toward the mirror. Is your son or daughter crawling yet?
She is walking now and dancing, and
Okay.
she loves the mirror. She
Yeah.
loves watching videos on my phone of herself dancing and being
Yeah.
funny and loves herself.
Yeah. What does she do when she sees a mirror?
She'll just smile or dance or laugh or she's drawn to it. It's beautiful.
Yes, that's in all of us. That's in all of us. And when you start to practice this, you reconnect to that. It goes all the way down through all the crap that your life has done to you, and it connects you back to the you of you. And that's what you can do. The other reason why this is so important is because we're so hard on ourselves. And so if you have a day where you don't follow through, or you have a day where you snap at your kids, or you have a day where you do something or you fall off the wagon, the secret is to not throw in the towel or throw it at yourself or bury yourself with shame. It's to literally high five yourself. It is to help. The high five brushes it off. It acknowledges that things are hard and it says, I still believe in you. I want to read you something because I think you and your listeners are going to love this. And I think you, and as a new dad, are going to get this, especially since you have a daughter. So we have two daughters, both of whom are in the book. And the text was from our oldest daughter. And this text, which is not in the book, but I'm going to read to you, comes from our middle child, who is 21 years old. She is a music student at a music conservatory at the University of Southern California studying pop music. And she writes to me, are you getting excited about your book? I can't wait to read it. And I have been high fiving myself in the mirror, smiley face. And I said, how's the high five working? She said, well, I don't know what to say when I do it. Because sometimes I still look in the mirror and I think, you're not as pretty as the rest of the girls. And then I say, well, you don't have to say anything. The high five itself will communicate it for you. And then she writes, but what if I didn't accomplish anything? Like, I didn't work out, or I didn't write a new song today like I said I would. Do I still high five myself after my shower? I said, yes. You have to keep showing up every day and trying to do a little bit better than you did yesterday. That alone makes you worthy of support and celebration. You see, we have the secret to life and happiness and motivation backwards. You think you need to accomplish something to be worthy of a high five. And she then writes, wait a minute. You mean the fact that I exist deserves a high five? I said, yes. And when you high five yourself for just standing there in front of the mirror, you are demonstrating that you see you and all of your potential. You support you and believe in you, and that no matter what happens today or what didn't happen today, you've still got your own back. And so then I wrote, so what do you think about what I just wrote? And she wrote, I love it. It makes me feel great. And then I said, could you explain why it makes you feel great? Because maybe your explanation will help me explain this high five habit thing to everybody else. And listen to what she wrote. She said, what the high five habit shows you is that you don't actually know how much you're always doing. And I think that once you start high fiving yourself every single morning, it almost allows you to be more present to everything you're doing. And it helps you recognize all those small victories. And when you compile those small victories, you can recognize all of your accomplishments, big and small, and eventually come to believe that not only are you worth it, but you can do anything.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And for me, as I hear all that, the biggest takeaway for me is that just being you, each of us being our unique selves and showing up day after day is enough. We don't need to check something else off the to do list. We don't need to go, go, go all out, all waking hours of the day like a lot of us feel we need to do. It's just being you and being true to yourself and loving yourself no matter what.
Especially on those days when you didn't work out and you didn't write that song and you didn't get your to do list done. Those are the most important days to show up and support and honor and celebrate yourself. Because, I think the reason why we get stuck in the do is because as we get older, we start to see that we get praised when we're accomplishing things. And so we start to believe that it's only in accomplishing things, writing the song, working out, getting through our to do list, making more money, hitting the number on the scale, that we are worthy. And yes, the secret is exactly what your daughter is showing you. She knows she's worthy just for being her. She knows she's lovable. She loves and celebrates herself just as she is and as she's not. It's life that teaches you to become your own sorting hat, to stand in your own mind and start to see the world in places that you belong and places that you don't. And, we kind of pick ourselves apart the second we enter school because we start to see where we can sit in the cafeteria and who the teacher likes, and you start to aim it at yourself. There's something that's wrong with me. If only I could be that way or this way or the other way. That would make it better. That would make people like me. And that's how it begins. And the high five habit, this simple little science backed morning ritual, has helped me learn how to push through a lifetime of that kind of picking apart and self rejection and come back home to me, to the person that is just like your daughter, that can see herself in the mirror and see somebody that's worth smiling at and cheering for and celebrating.
And what I love about this too is because you're the one taking the power and doing it with your own will, you're not waiting for somebody else where, you have to again do something and they have to be in the right mind frame to recognize it and give you the praise. It's like, no, this is going to happen on a consistent basis because you are in control.
Okay, so let me tell you what I love about you. The enthusiasm you just brought to that insight, you just shared an awakening that you had. Like you just shared the secret to ending people pleasing. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation of every relationship that you have. If you're insecure with yourself, which means if you look in the mirror and there are parts of you that you reject or pick apart, you will be insecure in every relationship that you have. Your daughter is secure with herself right now in her life, which means her relationship with herself, her acceptance of her whole self, is what allows her to be so accepting and not worried about people pleasing right now. When you can learn how to accept everything about you and everything that you're not, it's the most liberating thing in the world because people pleasing isn't actually about other people and pleasing other people. People pleasing is about managing your own insecurities. And when you can stand in front of a mirror and celebrate yourself for everything that you are, and even the things that you didn't really like or you're not quite done with or whatever, you're comfortable with yourself. So you don't worry about what other people think because you know that the most important person on the planet thinks you're pretty good.
So when you come to that realization, whether it's through this talk or reading your book or a different way, how do you go about bringing that into the real world? Because what's going to happen is if you were a people pleaser, people expect you to react in a certain way. And all of a sudden, you have this newfound confidence and this new way of behaving where people in your life, especially the ones closest to you, maybe your significant other or kids, it's like you're no longer just giving them the answers they want to hear and behaving in a way that you're thinking at least best serves
Right,
them. So how do you go
right.
about bringing that in, or do you just start doing it and realize that let the pieces fall as they do?
So here's the thing, every relationship is basically built on the energy between two people. There's a give and a take. And right now, if you are a people pleaser and you put everybody first and you're insecure and you seek people's approval and validation for your own self worth and love, when you start to practice the high five habit and you become more confident and secure in who you are and you feel more assured because you have your own back and you feel the empowerment that comes from starting your day every day, feeling seen and supported and sent into your day with a high five, what's going to happen is you will start to show up for yourself differently. And that will change the dynamic in your relationships. And that's a good thing. And so let me explain a couple things about this. Number one, if you are worried about people's reactions, remember you can focus on showing up as yourself, right? And making requests and drawing boundaries. And if you're worried about how it comes off, just focus on your tone, not the content. So don't ever change what's true for you. But you can always think about how do I say this in the right tone of voice so it's not demeaning or mean or short, right? So don't ever change the content of what is true for you, what requests you need to make, what things you need to do. Now I'm going to tell you a story that I think will help you with the topic of what happens when you try to change and the people that are closest to you actually either criticize you, roll their eyes, don't support the change, or are your least biggest supporters. So this is a story about me being the person that was trying to sabotage somebody's positive change. Okay. When my husband came out of the restaurant business and he's racked with this sense of failure, he decides that he's going to stop drinking. He's going to focus on his health and his wellness and mental health. And he gets into meditation and yoga, and he starts a men's retreat eventually called Soul Degree, which is super cool. But when he first stopped drinking, I remember very distinctly that very first night. And he went and poured himself a cup of tea. And I went like I always did at that time, and I grabbed a wine glass and I opened a bottle of wine and I started cooking dinner and I went to pour my wine glass. And I realized I was annoyed that he was not having a glass of wine with me. And so I turned to him and I said, "Are you sure? Don't you just want a glass of wine? I mean, you could just give up bourbon. I mean, what's wrong with wine? I mean, it's just juice, you know? It's not like, how about having a glass?" And I start to literally try to badger him to not drink. I mean, to start drinking. When he has said, "I don't want to drink because I've had a drinking problem while I've been in the restaurant business." What kind of an asshole am I, right? What kind of a jerk does that to somebody? Everybody does this. And let me tell you why. His change was confronting to me because his change forced me to evaluate my choices. Chris finally turns to me and said, "Would you stop trying to make me drink?" Let me tell you something, Mel. Nobody cares what's in your glass but you. And if you have a problem with what is in your glass, stop bitching at me and look in the mirror and figure out why you have a problem with what's in your glass. Mic drop. And what I realized is I did have a low grade complaint with myself that every night I was pouring a glass of wine, and that led to drinking half a bottle. And the reason why I was badgering him is because he usually split the bottle with me. And him stopping drinking was making me confront the fact that I myself did not like my relationship to drinking. And it's easier to point the finger and to poke and to try to get somebody else to stop doing that thing, whether it's exercising or going vegan or being kind to themselves or meditating every morning, because it makes me then have to deal with myself. So expect it. Expect it. And what you have to be willing to do is what Chris did to me. You got to call people out when they're not being supportive. And you got to point them back at themselves and in the mirror. And then you got to make requests. I don't care what you're drinking. Please don't make comments about what I am. And please don't ask me to have a drink. It's a boundary and I need you to respect it.
And to continue that story a little bit, how did that change your relationship to drinking from that point forward, or did it?
Um, I stopped at one glass of wine for a while, and then I stopped drinking for a while. And, oops, I dropped an almond. I've had a evolving relationship with alcohol. I'm in the middle of doing 75 hard right now, which is a 75-day mental fitness challenge. It's really interesting exercise. It's very bro. It's made me think I want to create something that's a little bit less like, ugh. Um, but it's 75 days of no drinking, two 45-minute workouts a day, a gallon of water, 10 pages of nonfiction or something. Oh, and a progress photo. And I love it when I don't drink. I absolutely love it. I sleep better. I feel more focused. I love the health impact of it. And I know all the science. But the fact is, I also love having a cocktail. So I don't know what the balance is for me. I know that given the kind of history of addiction in my family, that I'm prone to, and being, I don't know if it's a Midwestern thing, but I am a big drinker. Like, I'm the kind of person that I realized also, it's interesting because I used to be a bartender. The drinks that you order out are not the drinks I make at home. Like, I think 4 drinks out is probably the gin and tonic that I make at home. And so it's been really good for me to do 75 hard. It's been really good for me to do periods where I just don't drink for a month or whatever, because it reminds me that I can stop it when I want to. And what's been super helpful is having habits where I will have a drink on a Friday or Saturday night, but I'll have just one drink. And stopping at one drink is a really good thing because the truth is, I work really fucking hard. And I work really hard because I have a big work ethic and because I love what I do. So it doesn't feel like work. So for me, the ritual of making a mocktail or a cocktail as a signal that it's time to close the laptop. It's time to step outside on the screen and porch. It's time to put on the music. It's time to slow down. I just love it. And so what's helped me a lot is I have these big red wine glasses and now I'll make like a mocktail with kombucha and ice, and I'll put like a lemon kind of peel in there and a little sprig of mint, and it feels like a cocktail. Like, I can't even really tell the difference. And there's all these amazing new non-alcoholic spirits that are basically, I think, essential oils. And so I often will make one of those, and I've realized, back to habits, it's just a habit that I like, this ritual that feels celebratory. And so I have a really good relationship with it. And, I'm kind of one of these people that feels like moderation of just about everything is an okay thing.
And Mel, I can see how when somebody really starts to do this work and begins doing the high five on a regular basis, starts to form that better relationship with themselves, if perfectionism was something that they've struggled with, I think this could be impacted in a positive way by finding that love for yourself. So I'd love for you to talk
For
about
sure.
that.
For sure. Are you a perfectionist?
I am a perfectionist, yes.
Why?
I care about the quality of the work I do, and I take pride in it, and I mean it's I'm
I
big
don't
on
call that perfectionism. I don't think that's perfectionism.
I'm big on continuing to improve 1% at a time, and yeah, so I guess it depends on the definition, but I very much care about the quality of the work I do, and
Well,
inside being an entrepreneur and outside.
I think if I had to take a guess, you probably care about it because you care about the impact.
Big time.
I obsess over the littlest details, like what's the title on a video? What's the font we're using? Because I'm thinking, and I know based on data, that when you get it right, it reaches 100x people. And so it's not about the perfectionism for the sake of being perfect. It's about the artistry and the impact and the reach I want to have.
100%.
Perfectionism, great. So you and I have a level of intentionality and discipline to the way we do our art. Perfectionism is a paralyzing level of overthinking that keeps you from starting or finishing or showing up. And if you are a perfectionist, I want to tell you something life changing. You are not a perfectionist. You're just afraid. You're afraid of failing. You're afraid of getting it wrong. You're afraid of the criticism that comes with it. You're afraid of being seen as a failure. You're afraid of not knowing and what that means. This goes all the way back to that moment in the mirror. Perfectionists are so insanely hard on themselves. They have what psychologists call a bias of overthinking. And many perfectionists grew up with a parent that was very critical or unpredictable. And so the perfectionism comes as a coping mechanism as a child of needing to get it perfect because you would either be criticized or you would get a negative reaction from your parent if you didn't get it right. And so it can be very crippling. And what I want you to understand is you can repair this with the high five habit. Because when you stand in front of the mirror and you start to high five yourself every day as part of this ritual of showing up for yourself and of high fiving and celebrating yourself, even remember what my daughter said, even on the days where you didn't exercise and you didn't write that song and you didn't get the thing done and you didn't do what you said you were due, or your boss was sort of weird with their tone of voice, when you can continue to support and celebrate yourself in those moments, you are mending that damage that got done to you as a child. And you are building up this ability to do what courage requires. And that's being willing to try again, being willing to start, being willing to make a mistake, being willing to face somebody's disappointment and rejection and know that you're going to be okay. That's how you address it.
And one thing I find really helpful for me as somebody who really does care about the quality of the work and the reach and helping people, and I'm sure you probably feel the same, is that having a deadline can be so helpful. With this show, for instance, it goes out every Tuesday. The final Thursday of each month, we put a fifth episode out. It's like I have that day that I have to have everything in line and it's going out. Like there's no if, ands, or buts. Like we're going to get it as good as we can. We're going to put it out on that day, and if the schedule of release was just kind of, organic and when we get it done, quote unquote, I think we'd put out a lot
You
less
never get it
shows.
done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
think deadlines for people that are, working on perfectionism, obviously do the high fiving and work on yourself, but having a solid deadline has been helpful to me. What about yourself?
Well, yeah. In chapter 10, which I think might be my favorite chapter in the book, it's the chapter with the Uber driver, Antonio, who is struggling with procrastination, which is also just a form of fear, by the way. He wants to move to California, and little did he know he got the ass kicking he needed by having me in the back seat of the car. And it's an incredible story. And to your point, Jesse, it's about creating a runway. Because if you don't set a short deadline of what have you been thinking about forever, and can we set a deadline of 3 weeks from now of when you're going to get started so that this 3 week period is you taking action to prepare yourself to get started? That is a hack that helps you break the overthinking and the procrastination habit and actually get moving toward the thing you want.
An important point you touched on there to highlight is like if somebody has a big goal, say they want to, I know for you, your big goal is you want to get your podcast going.
Yeah.
And for somebody, say that's their goal or YouTube channel, or they want to, give this big presentation at work or whatever it is, it's setting deadlines on pieces of that because it could be so overwhelming to say, like, I want to have this podcast and have 10 episodes ready to go. And you can get
I'm going to
caught
show you something.
you can get caught up in it being so overwhelming. So it's like have deadlines to pieces of that big goal, and then it's so much more manageable.
Well, and there's something else that happens. And it's actually, I realize, similar to why the high five works. So I'm going to write down a deadline. I've been thinking about doing a podcast for 8 years. I got my start in the media business and radio. I have been kicking myself in the ass for 8 years. And everybody that launches a podcast, I get the inquiry from the Ultimate Health podcast, and I feel this sting of jealousy and regret because I'm like, of course, Jesse's done it. I can't even do it. Now there's 2 million of them. I'm too late. I'm just a copycat. I don't have any. Like I have the same garbage that everybody else has. When you live in your head, you will stay stuck there. And Jesse's a genius in this regard because a deadline does something really interesting. When you give yourself permission to have what you desire, and for me, it's to launch a podcast. I want to get away from being on big stages and traveling like crazy, and I want to anchor down and really go all in on a podcast as the central hub of what I'm doing. Um, I've been thinking about it for 8 years. Thinking about something doesn't get it done. When you write down the deadline, and this says January 2022, I realize it's reversed on the camera, but January 2022, I've now pulled it out of my mind and I've made it a physical thing in the world. And when I put this up on the bulletin board, that this is it, like this is the moment when I will say, what do? I host a podcast. I write books and I host a podcast. It starts to, the runway appears. And that's how you do it. And the same thing with the high five. You can stand in your head all you want and think this stuff. But the second you take physical action, you bring it out of your head and you make it a reality in the world. And that's the genius of setting a short, simple deadline of when you are going to get started.
So for you, Mel, you're confirming here January 2022, the show will be launched.
I don't know about the show being launched, but I will be starting the launch of a show. I don't
Beautiful.
know that it'll be live yet, but yes, that'll be the number one project that I have started. And between now and then, I can prepare. And what is one of the things that I'm going to do? I'm going to reach out to Jesse and I'm going to ask if he'll spend a half an hour on the phone with me and give me advice on what he would do differently or what he does now. And I'm going to learn and I'm going to get myself ready.
I'd love to. And I'd love to jump on and do another interview like this and be part of announcing the launch of the new show and
Awesome.
helping project
Awesome.
that into the world.
Well, thank
And
you.
I love what you said there, Mel, too, about focus on that being one of the big things you're doing. Because for the success of the show, the podcast that we're doing here, a big part of that I feel is because it is my focus. I think a lot of
Mm.
people often, take on a bunch of different projects and kind of half commit to them. But for me, like I was a chiropractor when I started the show with my wife 7 years ago, and it was a side project. And over time, it gained momentum and it got to the point where it could support us. And we ended up pivoting out of our previous careers. Long story short, this is what I do. And when people say, "What do you do?" It's, I do this podcast and I take it very seriously. Again, coming back to the perfectionism or whatever you want to call it. But I think
No, it's the
focus,
precision. Precision. You have precision.
right?
You're a chiropractor.
Yeah.
It's in your DNA to be precise. That's killer.
For me, it's like, this is what I do. It's what I love to do. I put my focus, my energy on it. And I'm curious for you, because you've accomplished so much and done so many different things, how integral, when you take something on and succeed at it, how integral is it that you're focused in?
Well, I think that you know, money, energy, all of it goes, it flows to where your attention goes. So directing your attention in a very mindful way is critical to success and happiness. It's one of the reasons why I don't sleep with my phone because, this sucker right here is a tool in my business. And it's a tool that helps me stay connected to people that I love. It's a tool that helps me communicate. But you got to be very careful because you can become the tool. So I have huge boundaries with this sucker, even though it's super important to me. And I feel like one of the hardest questions to answer is one of the most important ones to ask yourself all the time. And it's this: what do I actually want my life to look like? What do I actually want my life to look like? In the book, I talk about a high five life and having a high five attitude. And if there are aspects of your life that you don't want to high five right now, that is a wake up call that it's time to sit with yourself. And as you start practicing the high five habit and you start empowering and encouraging and loving yourself where you are and supporting yourself every step of the way, every day, and that's how you start your day, sit with yourself and ask yourself, what do you actually want your life to look like? You've just heard Jesse say that he leaned into an interest of podcasting while he was doing something else, and now it's become his life. You can change. 13 years ago, I was waking up hungover, anxiety ridden, $800,000 in debt, and unemployed, on the verge of a divorce and losing it all. And now I sit before you as one of the best-selling authors in the world, one of the most booked motivational speakers in the world. And, even I am changing the answer to the question, what do I want my life to look like? And so every day that you wake up, you have an opportunity to either criticize yourself or support yourself, to either hate yourself or love yourself. You have an opportunity to drag yourself through a life that you can't stand, or to take control one day at a time, to sit with yourself and answer the question, what do I want my life to look like? To set small deadlines for when you're going to get started, to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and high five yourself forward and start doing the work to change your habits and to take the actions that will lead you toward the things that you desire. And the very first step is just giving yourself the time and permission to sit down and focus on what that answer actually is for you.
I love that you brought up the what do I want my life to look like, because I'm a big advocate of this as well. And I can see through and hear through what you're saying, you're using this to, guide your upcoming path to have a podcast. I heard you mention you don't want to be touring as much and speaking in person. So you're
Yeah,
looking at what do I want my life to look like? What do I need to do? This podcast is part of that solution. So I love
exactly.
that we can use that example and highlight that. Mel, this has been a lot of fun. I know our time is up here. Other than the listeners and viewers getting a copy of the High Five Habit, how can they connect with you after the show?
Well, do the high five challenge. Let me high five you back. Let me coach you and encourage you and celebrate you for 5 days. Come be a part of the hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be cheering you on, because right now that's exactly what you need. You're listening to Jesse. You're a fan of the Ultimate Health Podcast because you want more for your life. And research shows that, yes, you can change on your own, but it's so much more fun and it happens faster when you're doing it with a bunch of other like minded people. So come on over. It's free. You got nothing to lose. I got your back. And it would be amazing for us to partner with you and high five you every step of the way as you turn your life toward what you want next.
All right, Mel, going to link that up in the show notes. And I know part of the story we don't have time to get into here, but the last book, the way it was launched, it did end up making the New York Times bestseller list. This time, I know you're going to be factoring everything in, and I know this one.
Honestly, I don't care. Let me tell you something. This
Okay.
is so
Yeah.
important. Would it be nice if we make a bestseller list? That would be great. It would be really great. It would make my ego feel good. It would mean a lot of things happen, like mainstream press finds out about it, more people talk about it. That would be wonderful. But here's what I know: the goals that you have and the dreams that you have are not necessarily meant to be achieved. They have a specific purpose. And the purpose is to pull you through your self doubt and your resignation and inspire you to move toward them. And what I have learned in my life over and over and over again is that it's not in the achieving of the thing that the magic happens, it's in the doing of the thing. Because ultimately, you bump into something bigger and better that was meant for you along the way of pursuing it. And so it's really important for everybody to hear the 5 second rule I self published. It is the most successful audiobook in the history of self published audiobooks. It has sold more than 2 million copies, which is unheard of for a self published book. It is in 33 or 35 languages and counting in 4 years flat. It has never made a bestseller list in the traditional sense. It is not carried in most bookstores. And you talked about focus. I'm focused on making an impact. And that book and the 5 second rule has helped more than 111 people stop themselves from attempting suicide by counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My intention for this book and my intention for this podcast is that it cracks something open inside you. It makes a huge impact. And so when you focus on that, it'd be fucking awesome if we made lists. It'd be awesome if everybody and their mother talks about it. It'd be awesome if everybody on the planet knows it and we get recognized for it. But the trade-off is all of those validations outside of it, or the impact that I really want to make, I would take the impact, and I know you would too, all damn day long.
Definitely. Well, the one thing I know for sure is this book is loaded with all kinds of great stuff and stories and vulnerability, and it's going to help a ton of people. So, Mel, keep doing
Thank
great
you.
work. And I really enjoyed our
Thank you.
conversation. And
I
I
did
look
too.
forward to doing this
High
again
five,
sometime. High
baby.
five.